In part 2 of this video blog, Josh Welton continues the conversation with fellow welder Nate Bowman.
Your photography and welding, and I know one of your things is like, I want to make welders look cool.
Yes.
And because we both joked about that with like traditional publications, like it's always like the old timer with the, you know, like in his garage or his barn, or it just like the aesthetic has changed for welders.
Oh yeah, and that's like so a long time ago, like probably 4 or 5 years ago, I changed the Wikipedia welding photo to one of my photos.
Yes.
So if you look it up,
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
All the Wikipedia welding photos are my photos.
That's great.
So I went on Wikipedia and changed them all.
Till tonight when I change them to my photos.
Good luck. If you have a better photo than I do of a particular process, yeah, you should definitely try to change it. The thing is, so when I changed the photos, the original photo was like you said, like from the 1970s. It was like the dude with a mustache, like
Tillman guy.
Yeah, basically, yeah. But like everybody wants to look like that guy now.
Yeah, exactly.
He was not.
But
cool
when we
for
were
a
coming
while.
up, it was like
not cool for a while.
I don't want to watch those videos anymore.
Now everybody looks like that guy.
Yep.
They don't have that like creepy mustache.
Hipster welders.
Yeah, it's so true. That's like I was like, I wear those big, like I got those big safety glasses and stuff, and everybody loves them. And I'm like, looking like a dork is like what's hot right now.
Dude, I need to send you some.
Which is great for me.
You've seen them. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, perfect.
I like every year when I do Miller videos for a while, I just look so ridiculous. Like I had the handlebar mustache.
Yeah.
I was wearing the dark safety glasses one year, the full beard another year. Like I always look so crazy. And I figure one of these days those styles are gonna come back, and then people look at me like groundbreaking fashionista.
Yeah, like the Tillman guy.
Like, we should probably look him. We should probably try to find
who is the
with the heavy.
Where is the Tillman guy? Everybody look. Figure out where the Tillman guy is.
We are going to track down the Tillman guy.
So yeah, so the Wikipedia, that was like kind of the first thing. When I first started welding, I was like following you on like Instagram, seeing the stuff that you posted. When I was out in the field welding, like I would take photos of my welding stuff all the time, and I would get just a ration of shit from everybody. Like, why are you taking pictures of your welds? Nobody cares about this stuff. Same with me. So I just like, after meeting like other people on Instagram, I was like, I'm like, if I can take the best pictures, then like, you know, I can tell the best story. And then I just kind of got hooked, and I was like, I actually started shooting weddings.
So were you doing photography before you started welding, or was this something you picked up later?
It was kind of like simultaneous. Like, I was always into photography, but I never bought a camera until I'd like weld all the time, and I'd hang out at this bar at night, and I'd just like hang out like on the like Thursday, Friday night. This dude that bartended, he was a high school band teacher, and he's like, yo, I'm gonna start doing wedding photography.
And you thought he said welding photography, and you're like, I'm in.
Like, that's what I need to do. So I just started shooting. I was just a second shooter. I shot weddings with him, and shooting.
Where's all the fire at?
Shooting, yeah, right. Like, I thought you guys said welding. Wedding. Oh, wedding.
Why is she wearing white?
Why am I in a welding stuff?
I put my FR stuff on for no reason.
Yeah, I'm so hot at this wedding. So the weddings.
Yes,
so the weddings. So I started shooting weddings.
Squirrel.
Yeah. So I started shooting these weddings, and shooting people is the same. Like a portrait, no matter if you're welding or like kissing the groom or whatever, it's the same picture. Like they're just bright light in one and not in another. So over the course of time, like I just kept getting better and better camera equipment. Like I would try, I've tried mirrorless cameras, I've tried point.
You're a geek with tech stuff, so like you just, I can only imagine.
But I'm shooting on an old camera. This is like a 5-year-old camera body. This is not a new camera body. It's this is a Canon 1DX, and I have my 16-35 2.8, which is like a ultra wide portrait lens. So at 2.8, you're like head and shoulders are in focus, like, you know, basically all this, and then everything behind you can make all melty, which is exactly what you want when you're shooting a portrait.
Have you ever had issues when shooting welding with sensors?
I've never wrecked a camera. Okay. Ever. And I've shot welding for 10 years or more. Never ruined a camera. Everybody's like, oh, you're gonna ruin your camera. I'm like, I've never, ever ruined a camera.
That's good to know.
You get flash burn, like in your face, like trying to shoot welding all day. So the big thing about this camera that's different than other cameras that I've shot with is you can shoot 14 frames a second. So when you're like going to shoot somebody welding, one of the things that I've really, I've like really kind of like learned with welding photos is when you're welding along, that contact tip to work distance might change. So the amount, so the amount of light that you get So you can have a photo, and I shoot in full manual like all the time, so the settings are set. And like that's another reason why the photos look the way that they do. It's because I'm choosing exactly what's happening every single time.
You're controlling what you can control.
So when I shoot a photo like of somebody welding, this thing shoots in, I have it set up to shoot in full auto. So if we're gonna like shoot you, which we'll do this a quick little photo, I can just shoot, and it just shot like, you know, 10 photos in
and
like
you can
less
go through and pick out the one that...
Yeah, like less than a second. So when you're like when somebody's welding along, like they might be overexposed or underexposed.
So you can go through and choose
choose the best one. It's really nice when you're shooting like MIG welding or stick welding, where you want to get the sparks in a certain place.
Yes.
So you're like, oh, I got this great photo, but there's a spark like right here in the middle of my image. I'm not usually the like spray and pray kind of type guy, but this camera is designed for shooting like sports and things like that, action photography.
Okay.
So shooting, like being able to shoot 10, 12 frames a second and capture 10 or 12, you know, images to choose from, that really has stepped the game up a lot.
I have a GX85, and what I usually do is I'll actually just record it in video at like 60 frames per second, and then I'll go back through and pick out the photos that I like. And I know I don't get the quality that...
But that's great. I mean, especially if you're shooting in 4K.
Yeah.
The other thing too that a lot of people don't think about is like, what is your media being consumed on?
Yes.
Like, if you're just sitting on your
shooting
phone,
for a magazine versus shooting for a blog that you're going to read on your phone.
Right. So, and you don't need to spend, you know, this camera body's around like 5,000, the lens is like 2,400 or so. This is like ridiculous, but you can still get amazing results on a $700 camera.
Right.
Anybody that's thinking about getting a camera, 7D, 50 millimeter, 1.4. You would crush welding photography with that setup. My buddy just started getting into photography. He spent like $700 on that camera setup. And he's like, man, I'm just not getting the same results. And I'm like, let me use your camera. And I shot a couple photos and I was like, dude, these are great. Like, these are not to like toot my own horn or anything, but it's like if you understand how to use the camera,
there's a little bit of a learning curve.
Think about some of the most iconic photos that have ever been taken. Like, they were not shot on this. They weren't even shot on a camera as good as your iPhone 5.
Yeah.
And it's not about what you're shooting on. Like, a camera captures light. If you can use that to your advantage, if you can bend the rules, if you understand how the machine works, you can get the results.
Like you were talking earlier about telling a story.
Yeah.
You don't need the perfect pixel, like the high, ultra high resolution to tell the story. Especially with what we're doing, the messages.
Yeah, that like grainy, coarse look. Like, you don't need 30 megapixels or something to tell that story.
It's cool every now and then to have that, just to show it. I mean, there's that ability to do that. Right. But when you're conveying a message, like if you're doing content for social media, that your iPhone, you're gonna I'm not technically, I don't understand a lot about photography, but I think I'm pretty good at like framing a picture or like getting the right angle or things like that. And it was funny early on how we even talked about this, but I had people message me and be like, man, my welds look good, but then I try to take a picture of it and they look like shit. I'm like, yeah, that's part of the trick. That's why there was certain angles that were always emulated for a while on, with weld porn and on Instagram, because they work because of the way the light hits the scales on the weld or whatever.
That's the thing that took the photography thing into the next level, where I started to like see the success, where I would like work really hard to get that photo, to get that shot, and then it would like blow up. Yeah. And then you'd gain a bunch of followers, and I'm like, all right, I need to do more of that.
It's like a drug.
Yeah. And now I'm like addicted. Yeah, big time.
Where do you see, like, we were talking yesterday about like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like, pretty happy with what you're doing. Yeah. But like, as far as like from a photography perspective, what do you think is the next realm with welding? Even?
Well, it's obviously video is like the next thing. I tried shooting video. Like, I bought all the slick stuff and tried to shoot video, and I shot for like maybe 5 minutes.
Do you think we'll get like welding helmets with mounts, like camera mounts, and or they just record at the same time?
I think the potential for like welding hoods that have just a camera and a screen.
Yeah.
Where the camera has the filter in it, because think about like how big a welding filter has to be, but you could put a high-res screen in there, like a 4 or 5K screen or something like, that's in your iPhone, that you can't visually see the pixels, you could put a screen in there and then have a camera that has the sensor on it, and then you could like basically instant video between the two, and then that can interface with your welder.
When you're doing that, are you watching the video?
You're watching the video. Just like
there's a guy who developed that. He was a little bit crazy. Like a few different weld manufacturers tried to work with him, and he was Canadian, I believe, and he like got really possessive over the technology. But one of the things with TIG welding is we were talking about earlier with welding in general, but TIGs especially, the dynamic ranges are all over the place.
Yeah.
So to find the camera that'll
do that, adjusting.
But he was actually, he had his helmet set up so that he was welding based on the video.
Yeah.
Like he was looking at the but it was a video screen.
Yeah.
And that's what he was welding. And the images were so clear.
Yeah.
They were so, like, we're still like trying to get lenses that make, that clear up what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, like you see the puddle, you can manipulate the puddle.
Yeah.
And the easier we make it to see those things.
I think the potential for that is there. I mean, I don't know, I'm kind of old school guy. I'm like still like a good old fashioned regular welding gun.
Old Jackson helmet.
Well, I mean, like a curved glass $1,000 speed glass hood, but
right.
But old fashioned
curved glass $1,000 hood.
Yeah, old fashioned in the sense that it doesn't have a screen in it.
Right.
But I don't know. Maybe I'll try I'm open to new stuff. Like I like new stuff, but I still have my own like.
I think that's where the best innovations come from, though, is people who dig the old stuff and respect the old stuff, but want to see something new happen, and they can blend the two together.
Yeah, I think that to answer your question, like kind of like where do I see myself like with the photography stuff in 5 years? Like obviously the video thing is good.
Yeah.
That kind of like is the goal. It's like I want to create like content that's a resource for people. We talked about this a little bit last night, like how welding schools and instructors and stuff, there's no continuing education for these people.
Right.
There's no requirements to be a high school welding instructor. So their resources are whatever they can find. So when they get on Google or they get on the internet and they start trying to find ways like, whatever resources, like how do I do a TIG welding demo or whatever. Whatever comes up is what they're gonna sift through. So, I want to be one of those things that comes up. I don't need to be everybody. Somebody once told me a long time ago, like, oh, you could be the next Jesse James. I'm like, I don't want to be Jesse James. I'm going to be me.
Right.
Jesse James could be Jesse James, and you could be you, and I'll be me, and we could all still hang out.
We'll all still do cool stuff.
Yeah. You don't have to be the only person doing anything. But I like and support a lot of these other, pages and people that are doing this kind of stuff. And it's great to have diversity, because what I say might not get through to somebody. You might need to say it in your way that works for somebody else.
We've all had different backgrounds, different experiences, different ways of expressing ourselves, and that's one of the things with the education system. That's one of the things I loved talking to Scott Robbie about the other day, was him bringing education to where the student is, as far as like not physically, but like where's their mind at, how do they learn things, and you can do that with smaller classroom ratios, and that's a big problem with our whole United States education system is we're trying to fit square pegs into round holes constantly, 30, 40 at a time in a classroom, hundreds of thousands every year. And what we're doing is kind of a niche, but maybe we can show like an example of how this could work on a bigger scale, maybe. To start something within the welding community that might be an example to educators in general.
So Rush and I are creating what's called Weld Labs. My mobile welding lab is part of that. So we'll have all the latest and greatest advanced process equipment to show people, but we'll be able to take that out, and I have a 2-part gas mixer in there so people can experiment with different shielding gases.
Sweet.
Where we don't have to like roll different cylinders in. I have an argon and a CO2, so we can, you want to try spray transfer? Here's it with 80-20. Here's it with 85-15. Here's it with 90-10. Like you can see all the different results instantly. So that's something that we're kind of take on the road, and we're going to offer that as a service to any company or anybody that wants it.
I love it.
He's going to do the TIG portion. We're going to bring you in to do some stuff too. Like you're very well rounded. You're good with the boys in blue. We want to have like all the brands and companies represented because this is not. That's a big thing about being a scientist. It's like I don't care what color
affiliation.
I don't care what color your machine is. Lincoln and I have a great relationship. Like they're like there are people who are like, oh yeah, but like we don't care if you use other people's stuff, because as soon as you get somebody using like one brand, I mean, you know, like I'm sure you have other brand machines, maybe, I don't know.
I don't actually at this point,
but
I'm fully sponsored by Miller at this point. So.
Okay,
but
you've used other machines,
and
you
at work,
use other machines.
Yeah,
use other machines. You were telling me about the Lincoln feeders you use at work. You're like, hey, these work great.
They do. They work great. The drive system is incredible.
So the whole point of this is like we can work with, you know, Rush has his OTC machine. They have, obviously, the Welby is a badass machine. You know, Lincoln has lots of different stuff. Miller has a lot of different things.
That's how Macomb Community College set up. They had like a room of Lincoln stuff and a room of Miller stuff, and then some various other stuff in between, just so students can actually be familiarized
New
with the different
technology,
interfaces.
old technology. So that's kind of what we want to do. So we want to go out, like we'll come to your facility, we'll show you how to make your welders that you have sing. Like we'll say, hey, they're like, well, how come we can't short circuit the way you do? And it's like, well, you're running an 1/8 inch recess on your nozzle, and you're running like, you know,
dude, so many people don't understand the
contact tip to work distance, short circuit.
Exactly. It makes such a huge difference.
Yeah. Pro tip, if you're running short circuit, so that's like 0.35 at 350 inches a minute wire feed speed and below, you really, really need to have like a flush contact tip and nozzle, because you need to be between like a quarter to half of an inch stick out and half inch max. Once your stick out is beyond that, it just doesn't, the short circuit is just not as consistent. So if you can keep it nice and tight, it's gonna run so much better, way less spatter, better arc starts. You don't get that little ball on the end. Yeah, much more smooth.
Then on spray transfer, you have almost like an 1/8 inch.
You have an 1/8 inch
recess.
Yeah, you have an 1/8 inch recess. They do that in order to keep the consumables cool. That's why. So you don't want that
hot process.
Yeah, you don't want that contact tip right up against that, and you want 3/4 to 1 inch stick out with spray transfer. So you already pick up an 1/8 of an inch just by the nozzle. But if you're trying to run that nozzle, you're already an 1/8 of an inch in, plus you have a big fat nozzle. So you're trying to like look into the joint, and then you're pulling out. So then you're half, 3/4, 1 inch stick out on short circuit, where you need to be like 1/4 to 1/2 inch, and it doesn't run as well.
Right.
So one of the things that I said a lot when I was at Lincoln, because I was blown away when I got to run their new Power Wave. I was like, how are you guys, like, it's mind blowing how well this runs. And one of the things about these machines is like lots of people have bought them and no one even knows. Like I have so many people that send me messages like, yeah, I have one of those. Like, what do you mean it's like the best machine ever? Like it runs fine. I'm like, people's perception of how a welder runs is directly correlated to their ability to set the machine.
Their ability to set the machine and their experience with other people setting their machines in the past.
Yeah. So it's like, I could give somebody that's been running like a nut, like one of those Miller, the 200s, like the white face 200s that short circuit like money, those old school machines. You could have somebody that's been running those, that has great settings, has their machine dialed in, flush nozzle, you know, all the great things, and they're used to running all this stuff. Well, then you switch them over to like a brand new Power Wave where maybe it has a big 300 amp gun on it, has that big fat nozzle on there, and they go to short circuit with their same old settings, and they're like, this thing runs like garbage.
Right.
And it's like,
or they try to set it up so that it runs like their old machine.
Yeah.
Like when inverters first came out, I would work with guys who would change the frequency back to 60 hertz and be like, no, I want it to run like my transformer ran. And it's like, it's
not the same thing, man.
No, you don't want to do that.
So that the big thing that I really want to teach people is, what do the settings do? What does every single knob on your machine do? When you turn a knob, what is this affecting?
We were talking about the Polaroids and the Aerowave.
Oh, yeah.
They used to use the Polaroid pictures to set those Aerowave machines because they were so adjustable. And that's now video. Like their Polaroids is what you want to do with video.
Correct, yeah. So the goal with the video content is, I'm going to use the Power Wave as like kind of the machine that I'm gathering the data with.
Right.
And the reason I'm using it is because it can monitor its own arc. It can, it's monitoring, it's making changes, and it's a calibrated piece of equipment. So we know that when I put a video out and I say, we made this weld at like 320 inches a minute, 27.3 volts, and it's 286 amps when we welded it.
Everything is exact.
Everything is, that's what it is. That's what it really is. So if you're getting different results, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
And that's something that manufacturers, like,
You're taking out variables.
Yeah, you can't.
Human variables.
Yeah, so we're just showing like, this is the data, this is where you set your machine, here's how we're getting these results. And, you know, like if you're not getting these results, like you need to look at your system, you need to look at your settings, you need to look at your ground, you need to look at your shielding gas flow. Like, here's all the variables, here's what they all do.
Yeah. Here's
the welds that we're making. If you want these results, you copy these settings, you put them in your machine, and if you're not getting them, here's things to look at.
I always get that, like, people give me crap for spending time cleaning my material certain ways, but then they're like, I don't understand why your welds come out better than mine. It's right there. Like, that's the easiest thing right there is, you know, prepping the material.
Anybody that's like, I mean, I think that one of the big things is people want to get, they want to just get to welding.
Yes.
Like, I understand that. I'm a welder. I'm not a fabricator. I just want to weld. If somebody just fit parts for me all the time, and I could just like, that are clean and
zone
fit and really nice.
And run beads.
My headphones in, just weld all day. That would be sweet. Like, that's like my dream job. Like that and running excavators, like, are like right on the same. Because like running excavators, like kind of the same.
And
like
being an astronaut, that'd be cool too.
Yeah, astronaut would be cool. Yeah, but the
welding astronaut.
Ooh, that's coming, man.
I wonder what we were talking about this the other day.
Right.
Like, how does the chemical composition of the atmosphere in different planets, how will that affect welding? Like, will we even need a shielding gas on Mars?
Yeah, that's a good question, dude. The Mars guy was here. The dude was here like the first day of the show that like opened the show. Yeah, he was here.
Really?
Yeah, he was here. And I'm like, how did I not? Like, we could have
been best friends.
Yeah, we could have like. Yeah, I had so many questions. How do you weld on Mars?
But yeah, so I was thinking about that one time. Like,
how do you weld?
Will we need shielding gas? Will we need a different type of shielding gas? Will the metal become more? I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, what's going to happen? Well, because like space welding is like a thing. Like you could take two pieces of clean stainless steel, put them together in outer space, and they'll just join. Right. So they had to do that like on the space station and in different places. Like they've had problems with that because of like where hatches close and then like the vibration like of like going into freaking space like wears through their like little protective layer, and then the hatch would get stuck because it's
basically
starting to space weld itself together.
That's amazing. Space weld.
Space welding. So another fun thing about welding in space, that's another like deep dive into where I started to realize that there was something to this welding thing, like the science behind welding. So what happened was where the industry started to realize this was when they started putting things into space.
Right.
So that's where like welding procedures, weld inspection, all that stuff, physics behind welding, that's when all that stuff really just like took off, because they would be like, hey, we're gonna put this rocket into orbit, and then they like, you know, send it off to a place like maybe where you work, and you know, Tim in the corner's like, yeah, I'm welding this shit together, and you know, welds it out, and then he like sends it up, and then it goes, they go to launch it, and he's like, yeah, Tim's been welding for like 20 years, he knows what's up, and then it just like blows up or comes apart, and they're like, maybe
it's experiencing different forces and different
but they're also
atmospheres
like,
than it's used to.
What they realized was they're like, okay, so there's power coming out of the wall, a certain amount of energy. It's going to generate a certain amount of heat. We need a certain amount of heat to melt these parts together in the way that we want them. So what happens between the wall, what goes into that box, what comes out of that box, and then what hits the part and then goes back through your ground cable? What's happening there? So there's a book literally called The Physics of Welding that's way beyond my reading level.
Interesting.
They have calculations in there where they're calculating wind speed on the droplet transfer between the end of the nozzle going into the puddle.
You know how many people I talk to that don't even understand, like, you probably need to shut the door when you're TIG welding, or you turn off the overhead fans? I had one guy laugh at me like, what? No, really, it's like
how
inert gas is very light. And it'll go away if you don't treat it properly.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out. The science of welding.
It's an expensive book by AWS. I wonder if they have one over there. It's very dry. It's like extremely dry. I'll send you some pictures from it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right,
dude. Thanks for your time, man.
Of course, dude. Yeah. Good to see you, man.
Hanging out this week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for watching part 2 of Josh Welton's interview with Nate Bowman, the Weld Scientist. To keep up with Nate, be sure to follow him on Instagram at Weld Scientist, and be on the lookout for more info about his Weld Labs collaboration with Rush Kane.